All right, we got WWE Champs 2009 to 2019. I'm going to rank these guys from their overall career, not just their championship reign within that time, nothing like that, not even how they performed within that time necessarily, just their overall career, because I think that's what people care about more than individual reigns, and guys like Reigns would place even lower because he was not enjoyable at all at the time. Basically, was just a goon to Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, weird goon that doesn't have a personality, compared to Seth Rollins, who does have a personality and can do a lot more in the ring and on the mic. Same with Dean Ambrose. Ambrose was oozing with personality, and that personality plays a key factor in what I think of you, right? When you when Dean Ambrose actually comes across as an unhinged guy, a guy who you wouldn't want to be around, a guy who's intense, who's angry, who's giving it his all, who's unhinged, right? That raises him up quite a bit on this list. That's why he's an A tier, right? We can look at other people. Edge, for example, you know, his best gimmick of his career, realistically, was when he was a vampire. you know, like no other gimmick that he's had has worked other than him being just in a tag team with Christian, right? Like the other stuff they did as a tag team, that I loved. I loved him as a tag team wrestler. Yeah, like, but overall, his whole career, like, just never really liked him. Besides that, right? I don't mind him. I got nothing against him. Solid wrestler. Like, I think this guy is the Miz here. Not actually certain, but let's just say that's the Miz, right next to Edge in B tier. I like the Miz quite a bit, but he's really kind of floundered in his career. Same with Sheamus, but I feel like Sheamus flounders at a higher end. Like he's just this like solid top level, like, I don't know what you'd call him. AJ Styles. I just haven't watched that much of AJ Styles. I mean, I've seen him in his WWE stuff, where I also kind of just feel like he flounders. I don't see the point of him. I feel like the only thing he's really accomplished in the WWE was his theatrical match with The Undertaker. Again, nothing against any of these guys. Roman Reigns would be, if it wasn't for the last couple of years, he'd be right at the bottom of C tier. But things have changed. People really like him now. And I like what they're doing with him. I like that they changed his gimmick. Cool stuff. CM Punk, never liked him at all. Never. I just don't like his gimmick. Don't like him. Don't know why. Realistically, just his gimmick is just like way too flavorless. Super vanilla. Everything he does is vanilla. Jinder. I'm going to talk about Jinder, Kofi, and what the hell is this guy? Alberto. These two guys, just like not that much of a character, not that much of a gimmick. I mean, Kofi has more of a gimmick, but also, Kofi has a gimmick, but not really a character. And I feel like Jinder has like a gimmick and a character, and it's believable. These guys just kind of, just also very flavorless. We'll go up to A tier. Talked about Dean Ambrose. Really like him. Hard not to like him. Batista. solid. Kind of he's kind of vanilla, but in a nice way. He's like a vanilla that is consistent and pleasant. I don't know how to explain it in any other way. Daniel Bryan. I feel like I like Daniel Bryan, but I feel like I mostly like him just because he gets over. I like that. I like seeing a huge crowd reaction. My introduction to him was actually like at a house show of WWE. My mom won tickets on the radio. We went to this house show, and I'm like, oh yeah, and he was in a tag team with Kane, and it was just seeing the crowd react to him, and then I kind of got back into wrestling then, and it was just really pleasant to see him get like huge crowd reactions and become a champion and stuff. Hard to not like Daniel Bryan. Randy Orton. Randy Orton's just awesome. He's just great, but I wouldn't say he's S tier. I feel like he will be, like no question he will be. A few more like reigns, a few more like really good matches. I feel like they could do more with him. I like him in RK Bro, but I want to see that tag. I actually want to see that tag team like do a lot more as a tag team. I want to see them like do a crossover with AEW and take out Edge and Christian, right? Like Edge's best things that Edge has ever done is as a tag team with Christian, right? And I think Randy could really do something that would like kind of round him out and not really like alter his gimmick, but like I feel like they could give him his character more to do instead of just him as a wrestler more to do. Like they give his character more things to do, I guess. But they don't really give him more like character. They need to give him more character, which I feel like they haven't done in a long time. Jeff Hardy, obviously epic, legendary guy. One of the coolest tag teams ever, but completely holding his own as an individual. Tons of personality. A lot of people's very favorite wrestler from the Attitude Era. I'm going to talk about the Attitude Era because it's very important to my S tier. The Attitude Era was when being at the top of the mountain, when the mountain was at its highest. It was like finding the highest mountain in the world and being at the top of that mountain, right? John Cena his time period is defined, like his debut is considered, they literally named the era after the Attitude Era to do with John Cena's debut. That kind of shows how John Cena's like in a different era, and that kind of, it's just a smaller mountain, right? And even now, I feel like wrestling now is like as good as it was in the Attitude Era in a lot of ways. You have women's wrestling being incredible. You have men's wrestling like kind of really, I feel like hitting its stride again. I feel like the product for the most part is as good as it was in the Attitude Era. It's different, but it's as good. But you know, it's not this like mainstream epic thing that it was, right? So Jeff Hardy, very deserving of top of A tier. I think if you polled people, especially people like over the age of 25, they would say their favorite wrestler being Jeff Hardy. You'd get like really good really high numbers for that, and that's impressive because you're going up against guys like Stone Cold, Triple H, The Rock, you know, like prime Undertaker, Kane stuff, right? Like just truly epic stuff. We got Seth Rollins. To me, Seth Rollins is clearly like the best guy currently going. Just great all around. I see a lot of similarities between him and Jeff Hardy. Seth Rollins is like the Jeff Hardy of now, but just great, phenomenal. I like him more than Jeff Hardy. John Cena. John Cena I didn't like for most of his wrestling career. I mean, I liked his rapping gimmick. I liked his finisher. You know, I like a lot of things about him, but I love him as Peacemaker. You know, but I just didn't buy into it at all for so long, and he was just at the top for so long, and it was very flavorless, very bland, very dry, and I just did not like him. But after so many years of like being on top, so many main events, so much that he did as a wrestler, I mean, it's impossible to not turn around how you feel about somebody when they're doing so much, when they've accomplished so much, had so many great matches. So he is very deserving of S tier, but some of these other guys are a different story, right? Like, I'm sorry, but I feel like these other guys are much bigger draws, much more interesting characters, better gimmicks, right? Like, someone would have to really give me a good explanation, some real solid reasons as to why John Cena's gimmick is better than any of these guys I put above him in S tier, right? So, Triple H, I mean, come on. Having a guy up there taking championships off of like The Rock and Stone Cold when wrestling's at its height, when it's mainstream, when people are tuning in every week who, you know, aren't wrestling fans, and then to be at that high level and then also be the leader of possibly the coolest, best, like biggest faction in wrestling history. Like, people typically talk about two factions as being the greatest in the history of wrestling. That's DX and NWO, and DX is the better if you're asking. And all of the other things that like Triple H has done, like basically his faction of like him and Stephanie being these like great villains. You have him in Evolution. Like, this guy just does great stuff for just most of his career. Absolutely, like, would never be anywhere but S tier. Same with Lesnar's an obviously different story. Lesnar and Reigns' stories like intertwine in a very key way. They're both very helped out, brought to the top by Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is the only guy. Like, Paul Heyman is almost as good on the mic as The Rock is. Like, Paul Heyman just, in some ways, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves for like the sheer entertainment value that he adds. Like, there's no reason for Paul Heyman to ever not be on a screen that's showing wrestling in some capacity, right? Like, but if you compare Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns without the Paul Heyman of it all, overall, Brock just has a like way bigger, more successful career. He's been on top for way longer. He's way bigger of a draw. He's way bigger of a household name. He has crossover appeal. He has international appeal. And that brings us into the next guy we're going to talk about, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio, oh my god. Just this titan of wrestling worldwide, right? Like, huge everywhere, huge in Mexico. Just a very long list of accomplishments. Just insane staying power. Absolute. If I was to make a top 4, he would be on it. The entertainment value that he adds. At a different house show that I went to. So this particular house show I went to, I think it was like the Rey Mysterio debut of Rey Mysterio. Like, I was a kid. I was watching wrestling at the time, and Rey Mysterio he was like debuting at like WrestleMania or something, like a pay-per-view. This was the day before a house show, which was incredible. Like, there was Brock Lesnar versus the Big Show, and Brock Lesnar. So I got to see Brock Lesnar F5 the Big Show. Like, it was all of the matches that they had at the pay-per-view, like, the next night, and it was just an outrageously cool house show, because there's Rey Mysterio, who I was so excited to see show up in the WWE, as people were like, it was in the later part of people migrating over from WCW. Now, maybe Rey Mysterio had been in WWE before, but Rey Mysterio shows up, and I had never seen the 619 before. He pulls out that, like, nobody even knew what it was called, right? Like, we're just like, in the audience, like, well, what in the world just happened? What was that thing? Like, what? Oh my god, right? Like, our minds are already blown from seeing Brock Lesnar F5 the Big Show. Like, just the fact that the ring could even, like, handle that impact was, like, just an amazing sight. The size of those guys. But then for that to be upstaged by Rey Mysterio doing the 619, just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And even outside of that, there's just no denying the unbelievably long and talented career of Rey Mysterio. So, before I talk about our top guy, we'll talk about our bottom guy, Mr. Bray Wyatt. I'm sorry, I've just never given a crap about this guy. Great guy from all accounts, but his wrestling character, like, what is this? What a disaster. Like, are you joking me? I mean, he works as a faction head, right? The Wyatt family. Kind of a cool faction, right? Just these hillbilly swamp people. But then you add this, like, magical, mystical element, and it just doesn't really hit. It's like, it doesn't hit at all, right? Like, think about The Undertaker. The Undertaker is this, like, magical, fantastical, basically ridiculous character. He's got, especially when you factor in the stuff with his brother Kane, and that's like the best thing AJ Styles ever did. The only thing that AJ Styles ever did that stands out to me is his match with The Undertaker, the one from the memes, which was a good match. I really liked it. It was cool, but Bray Wyatt just isn't The Undertaker. It just doesn't really work. It's not convincing. Maybe if I was a kid, I'd be like creeped out by the guy, but as an adult, not at all. And I like stuff like I like scary stuff that's intended for kids even now as an adult, because I can like see how it would freak you out as a kid and it'd still be like a little freaky to you as an adult. But Bray Wyatt is not it. The Fiend is not it. Just doesn't work at all. Nothing against the guy. Nothing against the work that he does. Like, he plays the character well. He does some really good stuff, but it just doesn't work, and it's so lame. It has to be D tier. I'm sorry. The Rock, obvious top of S tier. Are you joking me? Like, The Rock. Let's compare him to a guy that people call the greatest of all time, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is probably better than The Rock in the ring. They're both epically good at selling and being in the moment, playing their character, expressing themselves through like body language and facial expression. I'll even concede that Shawn Michaels is a bit better, but there is a huge gap. Not that huge. It's not like Shawn Michaels is bad on the mic by any means. Shawn Michaels is good on the mic, but you're talking about The Rock here. The Rock, and The Rock is so good on the mic that it really elevated the Attitude Era, right? Like you have the Attitude Era. Things are as popular as they've ever been. Being at the top is more important than it's ever been, and more risky than it's ever been, right? So experimental. And you have like the most experimental guy, The Rock. Like so many things that The Rock said out there could have not worked, could have turned the other way, right? Like there's literally like compilations of people just bombing on the mic, right? You got like Suffering Succotash over here. It's so many things that The Rock said were so crazy. And like that could have just not worked. Like he could in theory have failed, but at the same time he couldn't. He's just too charismatic. He brought so much entertainment value that it just puts him ahead. And like when he moved to Hollywood, everyone knew it. Every wrestling fan knew it, that this guy would climb the top of that mountain of Hollywood. Now granted, we might not have thought that he'd be like the highest earning actor for as long as he has and be like the one person with the most followers on Instagram. But there was never a question in anybody's mind that he wouldn't be like top 5 in Hollywood, like a top 5 celebrity overall, because he's just too funny. He's just too charming. Like it's unnatural. Like think about how many times you've heard The Rock should run for president. Like people literally want this guy. People who are left wing want this guy who apparently, from what I've heard, is like kind of like bounces between right wing and left wing. And I mean the guy's like this like rich guy and has been this rich famous guy. Nothing against him, I'm not saying anything bad about that at all, but like he definitely has some like right wing values. But you have like left wing people being like, Rock, we need you to run against Trump. We need you. It's like, it's just, think about how crazy that is. To where they're begging a wrestler to run for president. Like a lot of people are begging for a wrestler to run for president of the United States, and they're not joking at all. This guy elevated the Attitude Era. To be at the top at that time with guys like Stone Cold, and to stay at the top, to still be considered as good as Stone Cold, if not better, when you have to be the guy who's taking down Stone Cold. You have to be the guy who is the counter to the greatest character in wrestling history. Like Stone Cold brought so many eyes to wrestling. The character was just so important to so many people, and to have to be the bad guy to that is like there's so many reasons for people to not like The Rock, but they just can't.